Welcome to the Daily Influence, where our mission is to deliver a daily dose of positive influence that can uplift you personally or be shared within your sphere of influence. While not every episode may directly apply to your unique circumstances, we strive to provide insights and inspiration relevant to most people's daily, weekly, and monthly lives. Whether you are tuning in during the morning, noon, or night, the Daily Influence is here for you. Listen, share, and embrace the power of influence in your life.
Hey everybody, Brian Smith here with the Iron Team series, and we are going to tackle a pitfall that might throw you for a loop today. The pitfall is happiness. And I really personally never thought of happiness as a pitfall until my daughter Mary and I were writing our second book, and she brought to my attention that happiness can be a pitfall. And it's really interesting because I guess as I thought about happiness as a pitfall, I learned that happiness can get in the way of reality, and it can overshadow maybe what is going on around us, and then it can create pitfalls, which almost seems to contradict some of the things we've talked about in the past about positive thinking and always being positive. But thinking positive and putting positive thoughts out doesn't necessarily mean you're happy. It just means you're being positive about a negative situation. But just the act of being positive about a negative thing doesn't mean you're happy about it. So maybe it's not a contradiction. Happiness is like prosperity. It's subjective. And because I might be happy or something might make me happy, it surely doesn't make everybody else happy. So that could be a pitfall, because I could, in my happiness, be creating unintended consequences for others to be unhappy. For example, I'm working on Saturdays makes me happy. I get a lot of work done. Sometimes it gets in the way of Renee's plans for a Saturday, or in the past, it got in the way of my family plans. And I had to battle that because it was a pitfall. My happiness in getting forward ahead in my workload was creating a pitfall for me elsewhere. So happiness can be a pitfall. And we have to understand that because of its subjectivity, because it is so individual to each of us, that we might want to balance sometimes in our life what happiness means. We might want to better define what it means in our specific areas of influence. And remember, we talked about the different areas of influence we have: our home area of influence, our work area of influence, our friends' area of influence, and then everything in between, even when we drive. And what makes us happy when we're driving might be an annoyance to somebody else. How many times have you sat at a stoplight and heard the thump, thump, thump of somebody's bass because they had their radio turned all the way up and it invades your area? Does it make you happy? Makes them happy to listen to it loud, but it's different. So it's subjective. Happiness is an emotion, so it's not really a state of being. Content is a state of being, but happiness isn't. And being content doesn't necessarily, again, make us happy. Makes us content. Understanding happiness and how it influences us is really an important part of understanding our area of influence and what our influence can do in those areas. And remembering how subjective it is and how it can be so different in so many different situations is really an important responsibility we should have as humans. And we should think about it more intently, or intentionally, I should say. Any kind of happiness is great. But like all happiness, we should, and all things in our areas of influence, we should think about what our happiness might be doing to others. Am I happy to the detriment of somebody else? Is my happiness causing pain for somebody else? Is my happiness not aligning well with other people? And if it's not, is it something that I'll have some control over? Remember, it's subjective. You got to define what happiness means to you based on your perspective. It's an emotion like sadness, anger, fear, disgust. It's not a state of being to be constantly strive for. That's why it can become a pitfall. Believing happiness is a state of being rather than emotion sets you up for potential failure. It could put you in conflict with so many others, so many other things, even yourself. If you live in a constant state of happiness, well, then you'd probably dull all of your other senses. You'd start to lose perspective of what other things meant. You might overshadow things that are important. It's like pain. If you never felt pain, how would you know if you ever cut yourself too deep? And it might make life boring. Not that we want negativity in our life or sadness or empathy or any of the other emotions that we have to deal with, but they do provide context and contrast that helps us appreciate the good things and sometimes the bad things that make lessons easier to learn. When we strive for contentment, we can feel at peace. When we find those balances in our life and we feel good about them, and maybe not necessarily happy, but we understand where we're at in life. We understand the differences and we understand the differences of others, which is really the important part of having balance and practicing gratitude for other people's happiness and giving feedback and being transparent about these things is such a powerful way for us to manage happiness in our lives and to help others appreciate what happiness can be for them and for us too. It was interesting when we started talking about this, how happiness could be a pitfall. And the more I've talked about it, and the more I wrote about it with Mary, and the more I engaged with our team about it, the more I learned about how happiness can truly be a pitfall. And I hope now that for you, you understand and can have in context how finding contentment, finding balance for yourself can be that happiness. Happiness is a level. It's not something to reach to. It's at different varying places. And that you can be happy with contentment. You can be even happy with challenges. Doesn't always have to be that high positive emotion that we think that it appears to be. I hope you have a great day, and I hope to talk to you again tomorrow as we go through the reflections of all the pitfalls we've just discussed over the last week and a half. Talk to you then.